the show lapping, and there's nobody lapping. I don't know what's going on. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cubist. My name is Bill Corey. I am the Cubist, and tonight we are smirking and we are daggering. We have Curt, Covert, founder and designer and artist guy from Smirk and Dagger Games here. Hi, Curt. How are you?
Hey there. How are you doing, all?
We are doing great. I have been assured you have pants on, so we'll let you stay.
Correct.
Right?
Thank you. Yes.
Excellent. Good. Pants are definitely not optional tonight. Speaking of optional pants, Eric Buscemi is here with us. Hello, Eric.
Hello.
I don't know why speaking of optional pants works for you, but whatever. It made sense in my brain. And hello, chat room. How's everybody doing tonight? Tonight, I titled this episode Grinding Gears. This is the first time that I think I haven't tried to do a stupid pun in my show title. We're going to be talking about player interaction in board games. So tonight's overarching topic is going to be about getting people, those gears grinding together in interesting and fun ways in modern tabletop gaming. So that's going to be our main topic. We will get to that stuff later, and we've got a lot of fun product stuff to talk about. But first, before we get to our main topic, we have to start with our what have we been playing recently part. And Curt, if you feel like going first, I know that you had something fun you wanted to talk about.
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. Other than a whole bunch of stuff that I play test to review for our company, I'm just like trying out other people's stuff. Right now, I've been playing Unearth, which is a cool game from Brotherwise Games. In it, you're kind of delving into the earth and pulling out resources. And it's kind of a dice rolling game where you're chucking dice and trying to either score the highest on a particular land to kind of like score that land. And it's a set collection kind of thing. The more you get of that color, the better. But what's nice about this game, what I really love about it is if you roll really low, it's not like you did a garbage job. You actually get different types of resources that you can start building these kind of relic areas around. Okay. And it's a nice balance of, am I going to roll high or low? But either way, I got something, unless you roll a 4, in which case it's usually terrible. So
I like that. Just screw you, fours. Fours are terrible. Everything else is amazing. All right, guys. I like that.
That's nice to switch it up from the 1 being terrible.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, is it's got like a whole bunch of different dice in it. So 4-siders, 6-siders, 8-siders. And you use which die you want depending on what your goal is. If you really want to get low for resources, you use your 4-sider. If you're trying to score the land, you roll the 8. In any case, it's a really nice blend of mechanics, and I've been really enjoying it.
That's really clever. On the BGG page, there are 2 things that jumped out at me right away. And I when you had sent earlier in the pre-show that you were going to talk about this game, I looked it up really briefly. And the 2 things that I remember thinking is, number one, this looks like this is the first game that I think the art style reminds me of like an iOS app game. It does. In a box. Yeah. Which is cool because it definitely jumps out at you. You cannot miss it. But it made me just wonder if like, is this like this isn't an app, right? Like, this is going to be the stupidest question I'm going to ask all night. No, it's not. But
it's not. Like, it's a board.
It's not based off of anything. It's just
he asks in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's the stupidest question I will have asked in this part of the show. Maybe. It just looks like it's ported over from an app. It's such a powerful image that I can't get it out of my brain. Yeah. The other thing is they call it a bend your luck game. So that's a new term. What are they aiming for with that?
That's a good question. I don't know that I actually was aware of that particular phrase in relationship to the game. But I suspect that the choosing of which dice you're going to roll against what objective at the time, I think that's probably what they're going for with that.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Can we talk about that box art? That looks like some MC Escher kind of. I really like that box art.
Yeah, all the way through, the art is really just cool like this. Yeah,
I figured it out. The app that I was thinking of. Sorry, this is where my brain is going to be apparently for a minute. The app that I was thinking of is called Monument Valley. It is a iOS game that has puzzles that very much are that MC Escher style of like physics bending. It doesn't exactly work the way it looks like it should, but it's this very isometric view, pretty but sort of minimalistic art style. It's very reminiscent of that. If you look that up, that's definitely what I was thinking of. So sorry for dwelling on the weird part there. But
and then also this bad boy, I just picked this up today. This is Clank: The Tomb of the Mummy.
Mummy's Curse,
Mummy's Curse, yeah. Which I have not gotten to the table, so I can't talk about it yet. But I'm super excited because I just love the Clank series.
I got a review copy of it, so I can tell you that I think you're gonna like it.
Yeah,
I like it. I like it even better than Sunken Treasures.
Yeah.
I seem to recall Brandon Kemp, occasional part-time host guy, holding up the mummy up to the camera and making weird noises with it when he got his review copy. So I think he's a pretty big fan too. So, all right, we got to jump back to Unearthed though. Curt, on the Cubist scale of buy it, play it, forget it, or burn it, where do you put Unearthed?
Totally buy it.
Buy it? Yeah. It's very reasonably priced. It looks like you can get it on BGG for 20 and on Amazon for like 26. So it's not very expensive.
Yeah. And I was about, 3 rounds in where I just looked around the table and was like, I love this thing. I just like all the mechanics, the way they gel together. So
gotcha. Mike Van de Castelli. Did I say it right? Crap. I don't have Patrick here to mispronounce names for me this week. Damn it. Mike in the chat said something about it's the curse of so many games. This is one of the reasons why we have this rating system, right? Because some games are, if they're that good and then they jump to the front of the line, right? Like this is the game that you're going to grab. Does Unearthed feel like one of those games to you?
It is for me. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
It's one that I regularly pull out now when I've got people over and we're not going to play my stuff. So
that's awesome. So like, look, Curt, I get it. Yeah, you have a game company. Can we play something else? This is your game, huh? Very cool. Very cool. All right. I am going to do a little bit of a throwback for my entry here. I guess maybe throwback's a weird name for it. I got a chance on Sunday to play Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game, with our Pod Pledge super backer, Ben Deathlop, who was also in a video with us. We'll talk about that in a minute. We got a chance to play Civilization for the first time in a long time this weekend. This is the Fantasy Flight game that Kevin Wilson designed. Came out originally in 2010. There have been a number of expansions. We played a 2-player game with all of the expansions. Ben, help me out in the chat room. I know you're in there. I believe we played with all of the existent expansions, but a 2-player game. And so, yep. Okay. Yeah. Ben confirmed it was all the expansions. And I forgot how much I enjoy this game. Real fast. This is the Fantasy Flight attempt to take the well-established Civilization computer game and turn it into a board game. So it's everything you would expect from a Civilization building game. You have cities and you build buildings around them to expand the capabilities of that city, and you'll hopefully build more cities and you'll have armies marching around. It does a couple really weird things that I think are interesting. Like, for instance, the way that combat works in this game is a hand of cards. And the cards have they are square cards with 4 sides, and each side is like one technology level. So if you have like tech level 1 in your infantry, then an infantry card, you would use that side. And if you have tech level 2 on your cavalry, then you'd use the second side on that one and whatever. So you can upgrade the cards that are already in your hand by building technologies. It's kind of an elegant way to handle the dudes on a map theory, right? And then all of that stuff is just represented by one little plastic flag that marches around. Other than that, you can win the game in 4 different ways. You can win it with economic victory. You can win it by building out your tech tree all the way and basically the space race. You can win by a culture victory, or you can win by militarily kicking the other players' butts. And I do not think this is a perfect game, but I think it is a very enjoyable game for what it is. I do think it has occasional issues. I think that there are some balance issues perhaps between the different nationalities. Ben, when we played it on Sunday, mentioned that I was playing Spain, which is apparently one of the more powerful of the factions in the game. And so I worry that with balance issues there, that it might be easy for new players to get stomped or to have a less than ideal play experience if there is a disparity, right? Like if I get the really powerful faction, you get a really weak faction or whatever, or if you don't know how to play your faction because maybe its special abilities are not transparent. I think that it can lead to sort of lopsided gameplay experience, but I think there's a really fun and interesting game in there with a lot of neat levers to pull depending on what you're doing.
And it runs about, what, 2 hours? Or how long does it play?
I want to say that for our 2-player game, this is Sid Meier's Civilization, Chad, is what I'm talking about. No, the FFG one from 2010. I want to say that our 2-hour game, with me having not played it in maybe 2 years and needing a refresher on a lot of the rules, I think we knocked it out in 2 hours. I think it was maybe a touch more than 2 hours, but not much. But that's, again, a 2-player game. This is definitely not a game that, or this is going to be one of those time per player games, right? Where a 4-player game is going to be twice as long as a 2-player game, etc. So I would expect it to be slightly longer with a higher player count, but it is also a game with lots of micro actions, so there isn't a ton of downtime. Some of the phases of the game do happen simultaneously. Some of them, you'll take turns, but you don't do anything that takes a real long time where anybody else has to wait. So it doesn't feel long. It feels like it cruises pretty well. I am going to, on the Cubist scale, I think I'm going to rate this one this is tough. Play it. I'm gonna call it a play it. Not because I don't love this game, but because I think there are other games that do this maybe slightly better and in a faster time period. And setup is a pain in the butt. Like Ben is the one that has the copy of the game, and his copy is built into a tackle box. Like he literally just got rid of the main box and labeled a tackle box with all of the different, because I think he got it before custom inserts were really a thing, like before Broken Token really exploded. But it's a beast of a game to get all the bits, especially with all the expansions. His copies tricked out really well and works well, but I think that it might be a little tough to get to the table on the reg, so I would call it a play it, but it's really good. It's really good. Eric, have you had a chance to play the Fantasy Flight one?
No. No, I've never played any
of these?
Any of the Civilization games, no.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. Curt, how about you? Have you ever played this?
No.
No? Okay.
I have to say, those games, that can run 2 to 4 hours are a little bit too meaty for me these days.
Gotcha.
So,
yeah. And that tends to be sort of my wheelhouse. Like I am that guy that I would almost always rather play one big game than 2 small games. And I don't know why. It's just sort of where my brain has always been. But yeah, I definitely get that. So yeah, I guess we'll say Sid Meier's Civilization from Fantasy Flight is probably a play it, unless you really dig games like this and you think that, like, if this sounds like something where you can get a 3-hour game in on the reg, then yeah, I think it'd be great. But there you go. Eric, Eric joined us with like 47 seconds to go before we hit the launch button. So
you're not wrong. You are not wrong.
So Eric, do you have a game you want to talk about tonight?
Yeah. Well,
right.
I spent all day Saturday in New Jersey at the Cardboard Edison Awards judging. So I actually got to play 7 of the finalist games, but I mean, I could talk a little bit about them, but I can't give you any opinions on them, so I'm not going to do that. But okay. I did get. No, it just wouldn't. I'm not going to be like, oh, burn this game that's currently a finalist in an awards thing.
Maybe don't do that. Yeah, that would be bad.
Be
funny, but
well, but and actually, none of them were that bad. Just for the record. But so I'm just going to discuss the last game I played with my family, which was like an hour ago, and that is King Domino.
Oh yeah,
and this is the little blue-orange game.
It's the exact opposite of the game I just talked about.
Yeah, it's a game that finally won Bruno Cathala a Spiel des Jahres, and I'm going to assume everyone here is familiar with it. But it's a little tile-laying game. You build a little 5x5 kingdom. If you're playing with 2, you can actually make a 7x7 kingdom. It plays in 20 minutes at the outset.
Yeah, the BGG entry says 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, like, if you have AP, it takes 20 minutes. If you're playing with 2 players and you both know how to play, it takes like 8 minutes.
For the record, if you have AP and you manage to make this game slow, the person you're playing against should beat you with the box repeatedly until you step up your game, because this is not a hard game. Anyway, sorry. Go.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think I like it. I think it's more interesting at 2 because you got the 2 pawns and there's more play with that little auction. With 3 players, like someone's always getting the last thing, and it's and at 4 the same thing happens. But I love it at all the player counts. I absolutely adore this game. It's a definite buy it for me. I just looked. It's on Amazon. It's $16. Just go buy it. It's $16 shipped. If you don't like it, tell me. I'll buy it from you. I'll give it to someone else. there's my guarantee.
So I bought King Domino when
now Bill's going to say he doesn't like it. Watch.
No, hang on. I bought King Domino and I was really unimpressed with it after 2 plays, and I sold it instantly. I think I sold it to, I don't know if I sold it to Ben. I might have been Ben. I have no idea. And then I was mad. Like 2 weeks later, I was mad because I listened to other people talking about playing it and realized that I didn't give it enough of a chance. Because it's such a quick game, I needed to play it more to dive into it. And so now I'm mad at myself. So I'm probably going to end up replaying this or rebuying this, because I think there is a spot, like I just keep thinking about it. Or do I buy Queen Domino? Have you played Queen Domino?
You know what? If King Domino wasn't enough for you, I would say I haven't played Queen Domino. I don't need that to be more complex. I think the beauty of that game is like the elegant simplicity of it. But if that's not enough to like wind you up, then yeah, it sounds like maybe Queen Domino would do it. Or they're coming out with the expansion called the Giants expansion, which is going to add giants roaming around. I think that's going to add a little Take That, which will play into foreshadowing.
Nice.
Yeah. I've played King Domino. I have not played Queen Domino, but Chad just mentioned that he was kind of meh on Queen Domino, and that's kind of what I've heard about it. And I don't even know why that might be the case, but that's kind of the vibe I got. So King Domino, I think, because it's so simple, because it's so approachable, you can play with anyone. I think that's probably its real charm. Paul
in the chat is telling me I need to just buy Queen Domino and be done with it.
Yeah,
and Paul and I are on a very similar wavelength about games. So I maybe that'll be my answer, right? So yeah, Ben in the chat pointed out that I did indeed sell him my copy of King Domino. Maybe I'll buy Queen Domino. We'll play both, and I'll see which one I like better. Well, maybe we'll do a King versus Queen. I might do a face-off kind of
slugfest.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. That'd be all right.
Well, look, Queen Domino added taxes, and we all know doing taxes is fun.
Oh, that sounds great.
That's true. And you can play, and Paul points out that you can play the King Domino game with a Queen Domino set. So if you buy Queen Domino, you can play the base game with that same box, or then add in the other goodies. So it's sort of like King Domino with an expansion.
Yeah, sure. That's good to know. I didn't realize you could actually play King Domino with.
Yeah, that's really really handy to know. That's cool. All right, so King Domino gets a buy it from Eric.
Yep, gotcha. It does.
Okay, this is the shameless part of the show. I'm going to talk about a second game really fast because I received a review copy, I believe it was, from Punchboard Media of Paramedics Clear from Smirk and Dagger Games. And I finally got it to the table. I've had it for a couple weeks and I haven't been able to play it. Yeah. And then Ben and I played that also on Sunday. This is a 1 to 4 player game.
It is.
All right. I don't think I realized there was a solo game in there. Yeah. I'll have to go back and talk about that again later. But we played it at 2 player. The 2 to 4 player real-time game where you are attempting to save people's lives. You have 2 gurneys, and they will have patient cards on them. And those, they can have been locked in a safe or crushed by a boulder or have a tragic board gaming accident, or all sorts of terrible things have happened to these people. And they need some combination of 6 cures, I guess. Just call them resources. There's like oxygen, blood, Band-Aids, first aid kits, meds, and casts, I believe, are the 6 things.
Yep.
I came up with that really fast. That was pretty good.
That was very good.
All right. And those things you can buy them with these colored cards, and each player board tells you what particular combination of 1 or 2 cards you need to spend in order to buy the resources you need. So the game is sort of, it's a little time management-y, right? That you have your hand of cards, you have 5 cards at the start of most turns, sometimes more, and you can spend those cards to buy things, and you have to put them on the little dudes, and then you have to say, this guy has been treated, or I don't remember what the sustained. There we go. Sustained means I put at least one thing on this dude this turn, so he's not going to die right now. Or if you put all the things on the dude, then you can transport and move him to your score pile. But you're doing all of this while this wretched, annoying, awful smartphone app is beeping at you. And then the beeping gets more intense as the time goes on. And you have 60 seconds to do all this crap. And the worst part is that the rules specifically say if you don't stop the timer before it ends,
someone's dying.
Somebody dies. No matter whether you sustained them or you did anything or not, people are dead. So now you're freaking out because the stupid app is beeping at you, and the beeping gets more and more intense. And all you're doing, and the table is a disaster area. There's cards everywhere, every turn. You've got these little chits that you're trying desperately to put into stacks between turns so you can figure out where the hell everything is by the time your next turn comes around. You have to look at your hand. Meanwhile, other players can ask you for cards so you can trade cards to them. So while you're trying to do this cleanup, this is an anxiety attack in a box, right? But it's way fun. We had an absolute blast with this game. We were terrible. I believe, again, Ben and I played this together. Ben, I believe, had as many dead people as living people for about the first half of the game, as people were just dying like flies in there. But we had a lot of fun, and we were there was a lot of really fun dumb swearing moments. We're like, oh God, what do we do? Oh my God, ah! And then the beep, the app flatlines you, and it's one of those games. And this is I'm gonna say that you have to know your audience with this game. Like, this is very much a game where if you pull this out with the wrong people, you're not gonna have a good time. You have to be able to embrace and enjoy failure. I've said this about a number of games. XCOM, Space Alert, Galaxy Trucker is another game like this.
So anything real time?
No, because it's not just real time. It's any game where you can appreciate when things out of your control will go wrong.
Yeah.
So you have to be like any game that involves dice, as an example, where no matter the best laid plans and sometimes the dice just screw you, you have to be able to be okay with that in order to really enjoy games like this. And that's where but if you are one of those people and you can laugh at yourself and go, well, that sucked, I guess, sorry about your board gaming accident, buddy, get out of here, then I think this is a buy it for sure. It's very easy to get into. It's basically hand management and hand and resource management under a timer. The art's good. The only downside I thought the patient deck wasn't quite big enough. We went through the whole deck in a 2-player game. Like, we went through the entire deck and ended up having to shuffle the discards. I don't know if maybe we did something wrong. So we were wishing there would be more different patients. But other than that, it was really good. We really enjoyed it. The art was excellent. Curt, great job. You're one of the artists on the game. So this is me not so casually sucking up a little bit. We thought that it was very visually appealing. We thought it was good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that this is, if you know your audience, this is a buy it.
I also just want to jump in and say that's the art to this is particularly tricky because of the subject matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to make it too visceral and you don't want to make it too cartoonish. So you definitely have to walk a line where it's realistic enough without being unpleasant for people to look at.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to screen share one of the Board Game Injury piece of art here. Hang on. So that way you guys can see it. I thought this was really smart, actually, is they basically went with an art style on the cards that looks like those warning signs.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they look like the hazard signs that you would see in any factory. So I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit so that we get a little bit closer. No, apparently I can go large. There we go. Let's try that on precise. There we go. That's a little better. So that's the art style on the cards. It's very, it is, I mean, and some of it is more tongue in cheek than others, but all of it is that very stylized, like warning sign style.
Right. Whereas the cover is really evocative of theme. The cover is very realistic looking, and the drama on the woman's face really had to communicate the tension of the game so people would really understand what the game was about. But yeah, when we got to the actual patients, that had to be handled with a little bit of kid gloves, because you really don't want to see horrific things, right? So
yeah, I definitely don't want to see people's heads getting crushed in graphic time, but I also don't want it to be like, and that is a really fine line that you walk there, but I think you did a good job in handling this.
Because you don't want it to look cartoonish like the Charterstone people either.
Yeah. Here's the one other thing that I will say about this is that the game has more interaction than I was expecting. And this is the other thing that I really liked about it, is it has not only do you have the hand trading thing between turns. Yep, there's the cover art.
Yeah, this is the cover art, so you can kind of really see the intensity of it, which is really cool. So
Sean is asking, did this come out at Gen Con, Curt?
It did, yeah. And it's been doing really well. It's funny, you know, a game like this, it could go 50-50 with actual like medical professionals. You know, are they going to hate it, or are they going to think it's cool? Now, luckily, there's never been a paramedic themed game before, but even so, it could be, just wrong for folks who have to actually, deal with that every day. Happily, I have heard a bunch of station houses playing very competitively. When I was at Gen Con, there was an ER doc across from me who just gushed about it and bought 2 copies. So it's been kind of gratifying in that way too.
That doesn't surprise me, Curt, because my mother was an ER nurse for like 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
And she would come home and watch ER and Chicago Hope every night.
Huh.
So it's like, it's so that the fact that someone may accept more of that would not surprise me at all.
Yeah.
I would just like to draw your attention to this card, which explains a fair amount of my tension and why I don't go to Gen Con anymore. Thank you for capturing everything that I feel in one card. I appreciate that. That makes me very happy.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I just see Paul mentioned he gave me kudos for picking a first-time designer, which was Gary Kagan. But quite honestly, I've worked with a lot of first-time designers, and what I found is that there's some really innovative thinking coming from all over the place, whether they're like established or brand new. And it's been really great working with folks. Some need just a little further push to bring it all the way to bright. But some of the designs are really tight, and Gary's was one of them.
And I think we could probably do an entire episode on the difference between first-time designers and established designers, because we all, I mean, let's go down this road for a hot second here. We all know what a Feld game feels like. We all know what a Uwe Rosenberg farming game feels like. We all know, like, there are designers that know what they know how to do and have been living in that space for years and are killing it. And then you get rando guy number 4 over here who has never published a game before, who is going to come at the same maybe ideas or maybe his own way out there ideas, but will come with this fresh pair of eyes that can really give you a new perspective on stuff. And I think we've seen that a few times. And I am reminded. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So you also don't get people phoning it in on their first game when it's a passion project they've been working on for 5 years, as opposed to
anybody,
an established designer that but they've put out 20 designs and maybe designed 21. It was just like, I have this contractual obligation, and here's a game that's very similar to another game they've previously made.
I think Reiner Knizia said once in an interview that he has at all points in time at least 30 prototypes in this, like, I think it's like an architect's cabinet, so like a blueprint cabinet, and every drawer is its own prototype that is always going. And if he ever has an empty drawer, then he sits down and he designs a new thing. That is the opposite. I just wanted to point out that there is a polar opposite to what Eric is talking about. That you get one guy who has, you get Isaac Childress who believes in Gloomhaven and pours his entire life into making a box that you could kill a man with if you need to. Like Gloomhaven, Death by Gloomhaven should be a card. You need to get permission and have a card of that. But you have that, and then you have Reiner Knizia, who's got a drafting thing with 30 games in it. It's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. It's awesome. But I mean, it's two different approaches to the same thing. And so I think that there's something to be said for that. So I agree. Good for you for I think more first-time designers need to get those chances. So very good for you. Yeah. So I was trying to do this super clever segue with my paramedics review there and talk about how there was a lot more interaction than you would initially realize in paramedics. And then we totally went off on a tangent because that's kind of how we roll here. So let's try jump into our main topic, which is interaction in games. So the first thing that I think of, Curt, and I don't want you to, I hope this is okay that I can't help but think of this, is whenever I think of Smirk and Dagger games, the first thing I always think of is Cutthroat Caverns. It is the game that is it's your flagship game. I think that's a fair way to say it, right?
Yes,
that's Smirk and Dagger's flagship. It's the game that has consistently gotten glowing reviews from anybody that likes interaction. Kind of screw your neighbor, we're gonna make messes out of ourselves in this, this is gonna get messy kind of gaming. I am not one of those guys. I'm just gonna be 100% honest. Sure. In general, I am Euro nerd that just wants to sit there and push my cubes around. And I made 3 wheat this time, you guys, not 2. Yes, and I'm fist pumping because I figured out how to get a merchant into play in the colonists after 5 hours of sitting there marching around on a little hex grid. Okay. I am the exact opposite of the line, right? If there is a gamer line, I usually I'm living on the multiplayer solitaire thing. Yeah. So I want this is going to be another one of those episodes where I want to be swayed. I want to come into this. I'm not coming at this from an antagonistic standpoint, but I want to be swayed on why games like Cutthroat Caverns are so where the magic is. So let's start with this. Why does Cutthroat Caverns work?
So Cutthroat Caverns works because it dives right into the emotions of players, and it engages them, and then it punches them in the face.
Okay.
The game itself was inspired by my early role-playing days. When I first started, I had a very kind of an unusual D&D group. One of which I was, it was all drama club nerds, and it was 6 women and me playing. For the 80s, that was pretty astounding already, but it was a really Tolkien-esque group. If you found a magic item, by God, it went to the person who could wield it best. Yep. And it was, all for one and that kind of thing. I get to college, and I start playing with this group of dudes, and the shock and horror of looking around and realizing that the DM had nothing that they could do that was going to be anywhere near as deadly and horrible as what these other players were going to do to me. So it was that moment that I wanted to preserve and extend throughout an entire game. Are you aware of the German word Schadenfreude?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Okay. That is pleasure through the suffering of others.
That's correct.
Yep.
And what it's really based in is, I think there's something just kind of cathartic, knowing that you can line someone up, knowing you're going to betray them, knowing that if you don't do it first, they're going to come after you. And you line them up, you got the perfect thing, and you lay the screws in, and then you just enjoy all the fireworks afterwards. There's something really great about when that comes together, or when it doesn't come together and they get the drop on you. In general, what I love is emotionally centered gameplay.
Okay.
And for 14 years, backstabbing games, take that games, that's where it's always been for me. And obviously, Cutthroat Caverns being like the hallmark of that whole kind of philosophy. But I think the reason why it really works is it's a social contract, right? Mm-hmm. Backstabbing or take that or betrayal in board games is not fun and lead to table flip moments when you really feel like they did something that you would never do. Like you feel like it's a personal like slight. But in a game like Cutthroat Caverns, where you all sit down and you know each of you are going to be rewarded for doing this terrible thing to one another. So, yeah, if you got the drop on me this time, okay, I could be upset about it, but I know I was planning the same thing for you, so how bad can I really feel?
Is it almost like a truth in advertising thing? Like if you go into the game is called Cutthroat Caverns, you know you're playing a cutthroat. I mean, in modern video gaming terms, a PvP game, right? Like you know you're going in here specifically to screw people over. It's like it's like diplomacy. I'll do a real holy crap. How old is this example? When you go into a game of diplomacy, you know that a certain number of players at the table are going to get screwed, and they're going to get screwed hard. And like we were talking about with Paramedics Clear earlier, if you have the right group, it's an enjoyable experience, but there are going to be people that don't dig it. Is that part of this as well? Because you flat out put out on the box, Cutthroat. Hey, you know what you're getting. You can't go into this game being surprised that something terrible happens to you.
Yeah, and it's described all the way through the rules and on the flavor text and everything else, because expectation is everything. If you set an expectation and you deliver on it, then yeah, you know what you're getting into. When your expectation is, oh, this is a cooperative game, and then someone does something horrible, that's when tables get flipped. Right. And I think, thematically, this is, and I see someone else just mention it too. Thematically, it's pretty close to a game like Munchkin, Mm-hmm. But the difference between those games is a lot of the fun and humor in Munchkin. It's right there on the card. It's the illustration, it's the funny saying, it's, all of that. And they're amazing things because I love the gazebo and finding a duck in a dungeon. It's great stuff. Sure. But Cutthroat Caverns, the fun comes not from what's on the cards, but from what desperate lengths people will go to make sure they get the edge. And it's the interaction between those people and and just the amusing betrayals that they pull on each other that really makes the game fun and leads to all the laughter.
Gotcha. Okay. So it seems like there are two halves of this equation for me when it comes to, I guess right now I'm sort of talking about Take That Game specifically. We're going to come back to player interaction in ways that aren't Take That games, because I want to get a Take That specialist's opinion on my end of the scale as well. It seems to me that there is a marriage of two things here. Number one, the game has to accurately present to itself and to its players what kind of game it is up front.
Yes, that's true of any game.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. But I think that it doesn't lead to rage moments in a Uwe Rosenberg farming game as often as it does a Cutthroat Caverns style game, because even if you don't know what you're getting into, the worst case scenarios, you're going to be bored in a Euro game, right? Like if you're playing a 3-hour Euro game and it isn't what you thought, you're going to be sitting there, oh my God, why am I still here? 2 hours later. And that sucks, but it generally doesn't get your table flipped, right? It's just, so Take That games occupy a slightly different space. So that's number one, is that the game has to, I think, accurately represent what it's going to present to the players. And then number two, I think, and this is, I think, a big deal, is that I think players need to accept what the game is for what it is and be willing to adapt to the game sometimes. You either have to adapt to what the game is going to do, or you have to be willing to say, no, I'm not going to play that because I get what this game is going to do, and it's not the kind of game for me. Eric, yes. You are a great example of this. Eric straight up looks at me and says, I don't want to play a real-time cooperative game. I know that real-time cooperative games are not my jam. There's nothing about any of them I've ever played that I don't like. Like, we've had this conversation a couple of times because I want you to play Space Alert more than I want to breathe at the moment, because I think that the rage that you would feel after 3 games of Space Alert would make my heart sing for a week. Not because I don't love you, but because... That might be
offset by you having to replace your copy of Space Alert, though.
Nah, whatever. It doesn't... But you know what I mean? Like, so, but I think if you go into a game like that and to have the right mindset for the game, then you're going to get a better experience out of it. That if you sit down... A great example, a few years ago, I had a buddy that invited me to a game day, and he had some new gamers, and he said, we're going to play Munchkin. I really want you to be there. And I said, I don't feel like you understand how the two halves of that sentence aren't going together, sir. I have been super vocal for years about how much I dislike Munchkin.
Yeah.
I have gone on rants on this show numerous times about how I think the best use for a copy of Munchkin is to heat your home for an hour, because you can get those cards to burn pretty solidly in your fireplace. That Munchkin is the inspiration for the Burn It rating on the Cubist rating scale.
That's like, funny.
It is literally the game that I thought of and said, yeah, what's worse than forget it? Munchkin, burn it. There you go. I say that all slightly tongue-in-cheek, right? Like, because I don't actually think you should burn your games. But when my friend said, we're going to play Munchkin, and I really want you to be there, and I said, you don't, because I hate this game, and I don't want to sit and play a game that I hate. And he's like, yeah, but just do it. And I said, okay, whatever. I'll take one for the team. And we had fun. I still think the game is crap. I still don't like it. But
it's the end game in particular.
Yeah. But I went into that game knowing what I was getting into, understanding the reason that I was getting into it, and I was able to have fun with it anyway. So managed expectations on the player's part, I think, are a really big deal.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk that long about that, but that's a thing that I think is a big deal for games like this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I really appreciate almost all games. On some level, I have some level of enjoyment that I can take from one of those games. Now, there are games that play here like chess, right? It's all, there's no luck. It's just you and me, mano a mano, and it's a brain game. And while I enjoy all kinds of games and some deep Euro strategy, kind of, move the cube kind of things, what inspires me are games that play from here, right? That have an emotional center. And they'll still provide, strategic decisions that make the game interesting. But if I can get your emotions engaged, then I feel like it's a more interesting experience at the table, one that you get up and walk away and you tell a story about it because you got brought into the game. Now, you mentioned paramedics. Paramedics is actually not as high level of an interaction as many of my games, but it's immersive. You feel the game right, through every minute of it.
Oh yeah. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I think that's what really excited me about that game. And honestly, coming this year, I don't know. Smirk and Dagger is now going to have an imprint, which is Smirk and Laughter games. All very still emotionally centered games, but now a different range of emotions to tackle. So
it's funny that you bring that up because I had literally just pulled up. Curt was kind enough to send me the sell sheets for a couple of games that fit into this because we kind of knew that we were going to head in this direction with Not So Fast is the one that I was thinking of, which looks absolutely ridiculous, but very cool. So, so there it is right there. I will present actually, or you talk. Go ahead.
Oh, right. I talk and the camera goes. Yep. So Not So Fast is honestly, it's just a boisterous party game where you're reaching in and trying to grab these big chunky wooden nut tokens, which are like truly massive little deals. And it's a smash your knuckles together kind of a game. And already I've gotten some early reports that people feel like it's the genre killer, stealing a little share from things like Ghost Blitz and Jungle Speed, both of which I enjoy those games a lot. But it amps up the party atmosphere because not only you're just like, it's the instant reaction, grab, then smash the knuckles, but it also has the fun of, at some point, number cards get flipped instead of like the triggers to grab the nuts. And instead you end up doing nutty poses. So all of a sudden now it's finger guns and loser to the head and
I already do that.
Yeah. So it's just nice. It's just 20 minutes of horrible mistakes and lots of laughter and going like heck and fighting over the tokens, and man, it's a great design. So,
I got to demo it at the Granite Game Summit this year.
Oh, yeah.
And it really was a Jungle Speed on steroids.
Yeah.
But with multiple things to grab, right? Like Jungle Speed has the one dingus in the center of the table that everybody's trying to grab.
That's
and
right.
is large enough that if someone gets over exuberant and just ends up whacking it, like it hurts. I may or may not have been struck by the Jungle Speed dingus thingy in the past because somebody has just whacked it right off of the table. Chad in the chat says knuckle mashing. The first thing I thought of when I looked at this cell sheet was spoons, the old classic card game where you're trying to get four of a kind and then grab a spoon before everybody else does, and all the crushed knuckles and broken tables occasionally that come from that game. So this, I think, definitely is living in that same space, but with the party game vibe to it that I think looks really rad.
Yeah, and
plus,
instead of just like spoons, the different nuts,
pissed off walnuts.
Yeah, there's one less walnut than there are players. There's one less cashew than there are players. So when everyone reaches for those nuts, someone's not getting one. But did you grab the wrong thing because you thought it was time to grab the pistachio, and now you take penalty points as well? And so all these nuts all over the table, and they're flying all over the place. And man, it's just
that right there. By the way, sorry, side note, but I have to indulge my childish sense of humor. That right there is how I can tell Patrick Hillier is not on the show, because we did not immediately devolve into ridiculous giggling over when you grab those nuts. So, because
yeah, Curt, can we just circle back for a second? Did you have like a company meeting and have a vote to approve the title being "Nuts So Fast"?
Well, so it's a pun.
Yes.
Not so fast.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
That's not the half that we're concerned
about grabbing nuts and nuts on the table and
well, and quite honestly,
the fun and the laughter of it, right?
As we're playing the game, yes, all the jokes come out. So
in the pre-show chat room, Curt and I were talking, and I said, Curt, I know that as a publisher, you're going to have to keep things cleaner than, and I were warning about our one word, right? The one word we don't say on the show. And no, we're talking about grabbing nuts because that's us. Sorry, Curt, we love you, man.
Well, and it's funny because, obviously I've had the prototype, out at various shows, and people will come and play it. And some, a friend will say, oh, you got to go try out this game, go over there. And I have people come up and they'll say, Curt, I understand that I need to come over and play with your nuts. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh boy, here we go.
All of this happens. So.
Yeah. Well, and now it's on YouTube forever. And if you don't think that somebody is going to do a grab of, do a quick screen grab of those, yeah. So grab these nuts wasn't marketable enough is the idea. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of grabbing things, the other game that you brought to my attention that we wanted to talk about was the Tower of Madness.
Ooh. Yes.
So this is your 3-dimensional clock tower game with it is literally a 1 foot tall tower with gigantic green tentacles sticking out of the side of it as part of the gameplay.
Yes. So
15-inch tower. I'm sorry, not more than a foot tall.
So this is the gigantic box. And
now we've gone from nuts to talking about a 15-inch tower.
Yeah. And
with tentacles.
And this is the actual tower with all these plastic tentacles. There are 30 tentacles that come out of the tower and suspend a whole bunch of marbles up at the top. And it will remind people of their childhood playing Kerplunk, right? Except it has nothing to do with Kerplunk. You remember the RPG Dread?
Yes.
Okay. They used a Jenga tower to add tension to the game, and so everything risky you did, you had to draw, one of the wooden blocks and, see if you succeeded. Well, that's the same thing here. This is a mechanic that adds tension to a dice game.
Okay.
So it is obviously a Cthulhu-style dice game. You are investigators, and you're investigating unspeakable horror without losing your marbles. Literally.
Oh man, it's a shame that Patrick couldn't be here for this.
Yeah, Patrick is probably going to be very sad when he watches this.
I am so sorry for everyone here that they have to suffer through me being here instead of Patrick. I am so sorry, chat room.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, Tower of Madness, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but Tower of Madness is what I think of in my brain as a gimmick game. It's a game where there is a physical gimmick that is what is selling. That is one of the big sell points of the game. Amerigo, Stepan Belt, is a gimmick game. It's one of my all-time favorites. There are lots of games like this out there. How do you how does a game like this? We're just, for the record, we have just devolved straight into cheap plug territory for a second because I haven't had a chance to play this yet, so I have no idea how much player interaction this does or does not have. But now that I'm looking at this thing, I have to ask: how do you get people to it? Like, is it because obviously it's got table presence for days. Chad in the chat pointed out that this game is going to sell like hotcakes. You're absolutely, because why not? And it's it's gorgeous. How do you get people to acknowledge that it's not just a gimmick, that there's actually a game in there though? Like, is that a challenge that you foresee coming? So
there are always people who dig a game or despise a game.
Sure.
So what I can tell you is that I've been developing this game for 3 years. And a lot of the development time has actually been, how do I bring it in and not charge people $100 for it? Right. So I've had a lot of time to trot it out, play it with people, and get their reactions. It's one of those games that, it draws people because of the table appeal. You could set it up and it could be room decor, for God's sakes. Mm-hmm. But it actually has a cool and compelling dice game that goes with it. And each location that you're investigating changes up the dice challenge. Now, if you hate dice games, well, then this is clearly not going to, endear you to dice games. But
unless you really like tentacles.
Correct.
Really like tentacles.
Moving on.
But if you dig dice games already, and you're looking for something that is this is a lighter, more casual game, right? But it's still got lots of decisions you're making, and it still has, like Nevermore, a player transformation mechanic in it. So you start as an investigator, but during the course of the game, you can go insane and you join the game to bring Cthulhu. And so there's just kind of a lot going on in the box and in gameplay that I don't know what people are gonna.
The playtime and the player count on this. This sounds interesting.
Yeah.
3 to 5 players, 40 to 60 minutes, according to the sell sheet I'm looking at.
That is correct.
See, I did my homework every once in a while. And and I just wanted to point out that this is another thing that I had wanted to bring up earlier when we were really focused on our main topic and not just evolving into tentacles and grabbing these nuts. Is sometimes the game, very often, the game's design is going to will player interaction into happening, and it can do it in different ways. Yeah. There is Cutthroat Caverns, which is, or Lifeboats or Diplomacy or any of those other games where it is literally the game is telling you, look, you're going to have to do these things because that's a thing. Then there are mechanical ways that it happens that aren't just about what the game is telling you, but what is going to functionally happen whether the game tells you or not. This is a great example of that because the game has changing goals, and one of those goals can literally become, look, you win if everybody else loses, right? Yeah. Now you have a different sort of player interaction that the game isn't going to specifically tell you, but that's going to create, like almost organically create another form of player interaction that again speaks to that emotional connection that you were talking about earlier on in the show anyway. Yeah. Because now you've got a reason to root against other players. You have a reason to root for other players too, because you can't let the insane guy summon Cthulhu or whatever, even if it's not your turn. I think that's an interesting other way to look at this, right? Like it's just another spin on the same kind of thing. Do you see where I'm going with that?
I do. I think that at least for me, a successful game is built with a lot of different behavioral funnels. And what I mean by that is the mechanics, whether it is meta mechanic or hard mechanic, you want to guide players to realistically have the same type of experience every time they sit down and play. So the mechanics are kind of guiding players towards making different types of decisions because there are different rewards and different levers that get employed. And so, these interactions and the way that players interact, the way that players feel, all of that is really up to the designer to model and replicate again and again, no matter who kind of steps to the table. And it'll change because chemistry of the players will change, but reliably, the game will play very consistently because it does what it does well.
And when we started the main topic, I challenged you to sway me a little bit. And I think that this is a really interesting thing that nerds like me don't always think about when they think about game design, is that it isn't always about making sure the math is right or the probabilities are right or that things are, not all design elements can be broken down into a gimmick or a spreadsheet or whatever. Sometimes it's about making sure that the game plays the way you want it to in this sort of intangible way.
And for me, that's paramount.
You're right, but that's what I think is fascinating, and this is what's causing me to sort of rethink a lot of things that I thought about game design. Is that it's a whole different way of looking at game design, right? Like it's just straight up a different way. One of the criticisms I've always had about Munchkin is that I thought it was very mechanically weak. I thought that the mechanics themselves there wasn't much of a game there. But if I'm looking at it from my wildly Euro nerd side of the timeline, and I'm only looking at it in terms of the gears, those grinding gears that I poorly titled this episode after, if I'm only looking at it from that viewpoint, I'm not looking at it from the same design viewpoint as the designer may have come at it. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And whether or not, Munchkin is like the best example, because I think there are some mechanical issues that kind of hold the game back a little bit. Not that the sales show that, because honestly, I'd love to have sales that Munchkin has. So
they've been printing their own money for enough years now that it's really hard to argue with that level of success, right?
Yeah. But I think, there's a lot of things they do right in connecting with people. It ties to their experiences and their fond memories of role-playing, and it tees them up in a really enjoyable way. And yeah, sometimes the mechanics get in the way, especially towards the end game. But
hour 4 of that Munchkin game is when you really start to the chrome has really come off the machine at that point. You're like, oh, for the love of God, yeah, I get it. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. But I think when games work well, it is a perfect fusion of the right mechanical levers with balanced mechanics, but also with, again, these behavioral funnels that cause people to react in certain ways. And to me, it's even heightened when it really engages not just the brain, but the heart. And when you can connect those things, then you've got that powerful story to tell coming out of the game.
The machine can run as smoothly as it wants, but if the machine isn't actually doing something useful, what's the point? Right? Like,
well, I don't know about. I won't go that far because I love all those games that are just mechanics.
All right, that's true.
It's not to say it doesn't have its place. That's why there's that's the beautiful thing about this hobby, is there are so many different styles of games and so many gamers that appreciate different things about games.
Yeah.
So not every game that I make is going to be perfect for everyone. I know that, but that's true of every game on the market. It finds its own audience because people will really warm up to like something that really speaks to them.
If I had a nickel for every person that has looked at me and said, nope, I am never playing Eclipse with you, I would. Exactly. So I agree. Eric, go.
Yeah, I think to interject on this point, I think, there's different styles of games for different kinds of people. But I think one thing that happens a fair bit, especially with what I would call underdeveloped games, is when you have a style of game and then there's one card or 2 or 3 cards in it, and they do something that you'll have a Euro game and those 3 cards will have take that on them.
Oh yeah, no, you can't do that.
And this happens a lot, and to the point where you see a lot of people like, oh, we just don't play with those cards.
Yep.
We just remove them from the deck. And that to me is when the design isn't doing what the design wants to do, because at some point in the line, the designer or the developer thought, hey, well, this doesn't have enough interaction, or we need to make all the players involved, so we'll just throw in these things. And then players that like the interaction and the take that aren't getting that from the other 95% of the game, and the players that want to play their multiplayer solitaire Euro cube pushing game are like, oh, this was fun up until the player next to me just stole my things and now I hate it.
Yeah.
Terraforming Mars leaps to mind here. There are a certain number of cards in the Terraforming Mars base game that are take that cards. But no other part of this game lends itself towards take that style play. Like, your main point of interaction in Terraforming Mars is the board, right? It's the map for claiming territory, and it's those awards and milestones. Yeah. That's where your player interaction and drafting and card drafting. But there is no straight up take that, right? Except for these cards that say, cause another player to lose 3 plants and you gain 2 iron or 2 steel or whatever it is. And it's jarring because the rest of the game, it doesn't fit what the rest of the game's mission statement is. And that's the issue. This goes back to what we were talking about. The game has to clearly advertise what it is and then stick to its mission statement. Yep. If the game deviates from its mission statement, especially unexpectedly, then it's going to make people unhappy. Exactly. And I know a fair number of people that just straight up strip those cards out of Terraforming Mars because they don't fit the rest of the game and they don't make the game feel the way they want it to feel. That makes perfect sense.
Now, we have neglected some questions in the chat, so I'm just going to shoot these to you, Curt. The Cthulhu Tower game, which I do not.
Tower of Madness.
Tower of Madness. When is that released? Ben would like to know.
Oh, and I'm sure he's not the only one. Our goal is going to be to have that release at Origin, so June.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a
yeah. And by the way, they'll be green, but this is the actual. I mean, these are big.
That's awesome.
But these are the tentacles that actually we'll have for the tower, and there are 30 of them, plus like 40 marbles and custom dice and all kinds of stuff.
And then we have one more question from further back. We have Curt, is your company currently accepting ideas for new games?
The answer is yes. And usually the best way to get a hold of me is just, send an email, which is on my website, but it's, smirkanddagger@gmail.com. With just like a few sentences, top lining, the gist, and we can talk. But it's important for people to know that, the house style really is about engaging the emotions, and not just backstabbing anymore, but other stuff too. Like, we got a great emotionally satisfying storytelling game coming out.
Yeah, we need to segue into that, because I got to hear about that and see a little bit about that, and I found this extremely intriguing. So tell us more.
Do it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So this August we will have Before There Were Stars. It is, as I said, just a really feel-good storytelling game. In general, I don't love storytelling games, and largely it's because there are mechanics that you'll find in a lot of those games that just put me off. Things where, like, you're all working on one story and it keeps on changing direction and you never feel in control of it. I've never enjoyed that. Or, it's a judging thing and whoever told the funniest joke is automatically going to get the highest points. Well, there's a role for those games, but not every single one of them. Well, what I loved about this game, which, by the way, is a game where you are an ancient lore giver, and you have a handful of 12 dice, which have little star pips on them. You roll the night sky, and then you scan the heavens to look for constellations. The constellation cards have, 2 or 3 dice faces. So if you see those dice faces on the card, you can pull that word into your story. So, keywords like book, valley, bear, things of that sort. And then you tell the creation myth of your people. So in the beginning, and you use book and valley to tell the story of how the world began. And then the second chapter is, how do we get here? It's the dawn of our civilization. And then our great hero emerges. Then finally, end of days. And what happens? Is it going to be a hopeful tale or doom and gloom kind of a tale? It's your tale to tell. Over the course of 4 rounds, no one takes you off track, and it's secret scoring. So everyone passes around a little offering bag and puts these little star points in the bag based on not who told the funniest joke or who was even the best presenter, but who had this round a really cool moment in their story. And with that, anyone, even if they're not a very confident storyteller, can have a great moment, a moment of inspiration or something that really connects with someone. And it really levels the playing field so that everyone can do really well in the game.
And because it's secret scoring, there isn't any personal, like, I can't believe you didn't vote for me kind of moments, which can really take you out of a lot of these other games. And have turned me off of a couple other games like that, where it can, not always, but can devolve into almost what feels like a popularity contest instead of actually doing what you're supposed to be doing about the game.
Oh, I have to interject here because my wife and I occasionally play with another couple, and my wife is always like, Eric, you win too much. I'm always going to vote against you. And then my friend's wife is like, I love you. I'm always going to vote for you. So it's like, well, we could just not play then because we just decided the winner before we started.
Yeah.
Well, what's great about this is that it turns that upside down. This is a game which encourages the spreading out of points and the appreciation and recognition for other people's creativity. And we talked about behavioral funnels. There was something that was happening at my gaming table when I was playing the prototype, where we liked to talk about it. Scoring is secret, so we don't talk about, oh, I love this and that. But just because, of people we always talked about things that we liked about people's stories at the end of the game. Well, that was the first thing that I built into this game's design, was to make that a mechanic. There's one bonus point at the end to give, and it's not a whole, it's just 1 point. But you go around and you highlight 1 or 2 things that you heard during the game that you really enjoyed, and then one that you thought was the coolest moment of the game, and you hand that person this 1 bonus point.
That is such an RPG element.
It is.
And right out of an RPG.
And what's beautiful about it is that nobody's going to pick the same person all the way around the table. What happens is everyone kind of gets recognized for something they did pretty equally around the table. So that even if you look in the bag and you're like, well, you know, the points are the points, but you end up walking away feeling like, oh my God, this was such a cool experience. I loved your story, man. That was awesome.
I am fascinated by this. Of all the games that we've talked about, I think this is the one that I am the most excited for. My original background comes from the role-playing game world, and life has just taken me in a direction where I can't get to a regular RPG table anymore. The idea of being able to do a cool story in an interesting way and create a storytelling game like this really, really appeals to me. So I'm very on board with this. What's your anticipated release for this?
So that is going to be Gen Con, so August.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also think this is going to be an incredibly good teaching tool.
Yeah,
you're right. And in fact, we're going to
I hope you promote it that way too, because
we're going to have Common Core lesson plans for both social studies and for English.
You are 10 steps ahead of me.
Yep. And it's going to be, I don't know. The thing is, I've even had players who were on the spectrum that I didn't expect to really enjoy a game where they had to like speak publicly. But there's something about mythology. It's part of humanity's DNA. And we've all kind of heard these stories. And so it makes it a little bit easier to...
Is there such a framework?
There's a great framework, and the game is actually teeing up that framework for you. And it's given people like, you know, enough space to be creative, but enough guardrails to be safe and feel like they can accomplish. And I think it's a heartwarming game. Yeah.
I'm very, very excited for this one. Like I'm the host of a show where I have the publisher on as a guest. So I am certain that a significant amount of people that watch this video are going to think that I'm just a shill. But legit, this is like, I bought a copy of Jenga and I took it to BGG last year so that way I could play Dread for the first time, because I have been trying to get a decent one-shot role-playing experience that I felt like would be something that would really shine. And this isn't strictly speaking role-playing as much as it is storytelling, but I think this might do the same sort of thing that I was looking for from that, but in a really interesting and unique way. I'm very excited about this. If the Cubist is accepting review copies, is all I'm going to say, Mr. Covert. You know, whatever you feel like sending down. And actually, we're going to wrap up our main topic here, and we're going to go to rapid fire in a second. But I want to do a little bit of self-serving, really cheap plugs before we get to the awesome part, because I don't want to miss this right now. For those of you that may have missed it, we did a live play of a new game that is on Kickstarter right now with just a few days to go, called Good Dog, Bad Zombie, which is basically about being a dog saving stupid humans from the zombie apocalypse. If you look on the YouTube channel, there is a video of Ben and I playing that yesterday. We got, by the way, the designers and publishers reached out to us and said that they loved the video. So the designers approve. We did something halfway right. We're going to be doing more of those live stream plays here at Cubist HQ in the foreseeable future. So I would urge you to check that out. Check it out on Kickstarter as well. There's a link in this description for the Kickstarter, and then just go to the YouTube page to check the other thing. I'm mentioning that because when I make the joke about review copies, I'm pointing out that we're going to be doing, viewers chat room, we're going to be doing more of these videos moving forward. So I'm not just making a joke. Watch, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell on the YouTube page and get notifications. We're going to do more of these. I'm not going to be able to schedule them out real reliably early on, but I'm going to start trying to do one a week of something, some sort of a live streamed extra show, just to add a little bit more contact to the channel. So that'll be fun. Anyway, sorry for the self-serving plug there, but I needed to throw that in before I forgot about it, because I also didn't want people to think I just want free games. All right. Patrick could not join us tonight, but he did send along 5 questions, as is his job, for the rapid fire segment. We are to that final segment of the show. In the prep email, I very briefly explained how this works, but for everybody, or people that may be viewing for the first time, I'm going to ask Curt Covert 5 questions. He is not allowed to repeat the question in an effort to bide time. He's not allowed to do lots of ums and uhs. Every answer must be unique. Those are your 3 rules.
I am terrible at this.
I know. That's why we do it. Everybody is. It's great. We've actually had one person that killed it.
Recently, someone absolutely crushed it. Who was that?
Yes, it was. I believe it was Bearded Rogue. I think it was Tony.
Tony.
That was ridiculously good at it. And then, but on the bright
so
side,
no pressure, Curt.
Yeah, but Carla then melted down. For Carla from Weird Giraffe Games, she had Carla Kopp. She had a full on. It all went to hell in a handbasket. So that balanced itself out. The karma was there for the show. So
I'm now going to break out the forbidden word.
Yes, and don't say the word that rhymes with duck. That's the other one. All right. So, Curt Covert of Smirk and Dagger Games, are you prepared for Patrick Hillier's 5 questions?
No.
All right. That's exactly what we like. Are you ready? Here we go. Curt, a TV show featuring rescue vehicles.
Thunderbirds.
There you go. Your favorite childhood game.
Haunted Mansion.
All right. The best take that game that you haven't published.
Wiz War.
There you go. A game that you consider a classic.
Dungeon Quest.
There you go. Oh, wow. And what character would you want to be in Cutthroat Caverns?
Vasha.
See, and you killed it. You were so worried about how terrible you were going to be.
He didn't repeat a single question or he actually listened to the instructions.
None of that stuff. That's the problem, is he listened to the instructions. I made too big of a deal out of the instructions. I didn't just let him melt down. Curt, that was awesome. We have talked about a lot of games, both upcoming and existent and in the near future and whatnot. If people wanted to find out more about all the Smirk and Dagger and Smirk and Laughter goodness that's coming, where would we send them online?
Before Curt even says anything, I'm going to say that you should check out the Casual Games Insider magazine because the latest issue has like a 3-page spread about Curt.
It's like 8 pages.
And is it?
You have an 8-page embarrassing spread in a.
Well, it's not embarrassing, but it's
thorough.
It's thorough. I was talking to the interviewer for 3 hours, and then they interviewed 2 of my folks for another hour and a half each.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
nice. Casual Game Insider.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on newsstands. You can find it like at Barnes & Noble. But otherwise, you can go to Smirk & Dagger is kind of my Facebook handle. You can go to smirkanddagger.com.
Is that the actual word "and" when it's .com? Because you can't put 100% into it.
Correct.
I know that, but I want to make sure I say it out loud because
you are correct. And same with Twitter. It's at Smirk and Dagger with AND.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Eric Buscemi, thank you so much for coming and being our last-minute co-host. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, always.
Where do people find out more about the awesome stuff that you do? Because you do awesome stuff.
Oh, thank you. I live on Twitter at Eric Buscemi, and I write a blog and I do reviews as the Cardboard Horde, and those can be found on the Punchboard Media website at punchboardmedia.com, where we all bring something to the table.
Nice. Nice. I was going to do it if you didn't.
I nailed it on the first try.
You know what? People give me crap because they say everybody thinks I'm going to forget the tagline at the end of the show, and I have yet to forget it. Damn it.
I usually mess it up.
I know you do, but I practice.
And we're there doing things.
Yes, and where we sometimes, I don't know.
Sitting on the table. No, we don't sit on the table, but
I mean, we do sometimes.
Well,
don't forget, you can go to thecubistpodcast.com to find all of your Cubist needs, including ways to support the show via merch. And you can pledge there's a link below for our Pod Pledge page. If you feel like donating financially to the show, you're welcome to do so there. The link, the support the show link on the website still goes to Patreon, which is still up and functional. I'd rather you go to Pod Pledge, though. If you haven't had a chance to financially donate and you wish to, please do that. You can follow me at Bill Corey Jr. or the show at Cubist Podcast on Twitter. That's where we do most of our promo stuff. If you are a Twitter user and you don't want to hit the notifications bell on the YouTube page, If you follow at Cubist Podcast, we do tweets on the day of everything that's going to happen, at least one or two, usually every few hours on the big show weeks. So, Curt, thank you so much for joining us. I feel I didn't know about this 8-page spread in Casual Game Insider. I didn't know you were so famous. Now I'm extra. I'm glad I didn't find out till the end. I'd have been all nervous and stuff.
I know. It was kind of a big deal, I guess.
I was like, hey, I know that guy.
Did he have pants on? All right, never mind.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you all have a fantastic week. We will catch you all again next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.